Hello, welcome to this webinar hosted by the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. I'm Kenny McHugh, the National Secure by Design Manager, and supporting me and co-presenting today on this presentation of Secure by Design is Stuart Ward, the National Designing Out Crime Manager from Police Scotland. I'm going to give the first part of the presentation and then we'll have a seamless, fingers crossed, transmission across to Stuart at Police Scotland. So here too, as I say, in this session, what I'd really like to do is give you a taster of what Secure by Design is all about. But of course, being mindful of the fact that there are time constraints and of course the ability to remain interested. And it's my intention, and certainly Stuart's intention, to keep you as informed and as engaged as possible. So you can see there what we're going to run through in this short webinar today. So what is important, just to give you a wee bit of history about Secure by Design, that's been around now for nearly 31 years. And Secure by Design is it's a national police initiative. And we would regard it as the flagship of crime prevention initiatives to design out crime through the use of accredited and fit for purpose security products mixed with the principles of crime prevention through environmental design. And what is important to say is that designing out crime reduces the vulnerability of a person, property, or even of a place by removing the opportunity within the environment that may have inadvertently been placed there. And what is important as well is just to say that the initiative is entirely self-funded. We have somewhere in the region of 800 member companies, and out of those 800 member companies that are distributed nationally and some in Europe and further afield, have somewhere in the region of 8,000 accredited products, such as doors and windows and locks, alarms, alarm receiving centres and lone worker devices, padlocks to name but a few. But what is important to actually say that is all those products are tested and certified to show that they meet the police Secure by Design standard and meet the police preferred specification. And as I said, you know, Secure by Design has been around quite some time, since, as I say, nearly 31 years. And it came about as a result of the housing boom in the 70s and the 80s, when there was a huge and urgent demand for housing. But what we saw, certainly in policing, was that estates were being built very, very quickly, and houses were being built very, very quickly. But as a result of that need and speed, there was at times no regard for crime or crime prevention measures to be built in to properties. And what we actually saw was perhaps very cheap doors and windows that were being put in to these properties. And it was a paradise for criminals, because criminals very early on realized that if it was perhaps quite a cheap window, instead of going through a door, they would actually just remove the external slips on an externally glazed window, remove the glazed pane very quietly, and gain access to the property. So that was actually a problem that we saw very early on. But even when you go out from the housing itself, and we certainly saw on some housing estates where things like sky walkways or subways were incorporated into these large estates, and they were designed to keep pedestrians and the increasing use of vehicles apart. And what that actually did, it gave criminals anonymity, and it gave them areas to move around, commit crimes, and to escape very quickly, because the developments were perhaps so permeable. And in response to these demands, that's why Secure by Design was set up to reduce the opportunity for crime, and especially burglary. But the great thing is, being a national initiative, we have specially trained officers that are based throughout the United Kingdom. And this allows Secure by Design to be delivered at a local level. And I think what is very important to say here, and as you can see on the slide, you know, the advice is given free. It is at no cost whatsoever. And that's really important, because you can appreciate why we have secure by design is actually to reduce crime and then have less victims of crime. And that really is the main driver. But the spin-off for policing is not only less victims of crime, which is obviously great, but the spin-off is because we have less demand on policing resources and the policing services throughout the UK, we can actually deploy those resources in a more proactive, community-based policing activities. And that is really, really important. And what Secure by Design does is, you know, this investment of designing out crime is there for a long time, which pays dividends year on year on year. Because when we look at things like domestic burglary, we know what we're up against. We know that the vast majority of opportunistic offenders are between the ages of 15 and 24 years of age. We know that they have no real specialist knowledge, but will utilize basic tools. And what we definitely know is that they will give up after a very short space of time. And when we actually, on Secure by Design developments, ask for the doors and windows to meet a specific security standard, they may well meet that specific security standard. But what is also very important is that we remember you can have the best security doors and the best security windows in the world, but if you forget to lock your doors and windows, then it puts all those good measures out the way. So we would always ask, please, if you're at home, make sure that your doors and windows are kept locked. And what is actually quite interesting is there was a recent piece of work done by Nottingham Trent University, and it was social rented accommodation, where we actually see that, you know, you can see from the statistics that I've put on the slide here that, you know, 78% more households will experience theft, 40% more in criminal damage, more in burglary, and again, roughly 40% more in household thefts. And actually designing in very simple security measures, such as putting in boundary fencing or restricting access to the rear of a property, or installing external lighting, or even some signage or a visible alarm on the property, will actually make a significant difference. And a lot of those measures are actually incorporated, certainly on new builds, from the design phase of a project. And this is why we talk about designing out crime. We're removing the opportunity. And that's why here, I live here in Northern Ireland, although originally from Scotland. All social housing in Northern Ireland meets the Secure by Design standards as the same as what is required in Scotland. And designing out crime really is a very kind of straightforward process, and it follows the same basic principles of a layered approach to security. The levels of security obviously differ depending on the risk. And when we're talking about risk, it's important to think ahead. And I'm sure, you know, certainly I experienced it when I was growing up in Dundee. You know, you may have seen it perhaps at the back of shops, where if the shop had been broken into, or even, you know, at the back of a tenement where you've perhaps got a courtyard and a wall, where some residents were that fearful of becoming victims of crime that they actually cemented in broken glass on the top of the wall. And I think it's important that from the outset, if we take the opportunity to design out the problem, then we don't have that problem in the future. But what is important to remember is that Secure by Design and the whole principle of designing out crime is a very sympathetic approach to design, because the last thing that we want to create is a fortress, because that would work against the actual principles of Secure by Design. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through a short interactive design. It's an interactive guide. We have this guide is available on the Secure by Design website, and it explores, as it says there, the principles of designing out crime. When it's broken into two parts, you have a residential scenarios, and you also have commercial scenarios. And as this this little sort of video runs through, you'll see that it gives you, you can hover over like the numbers, and that'll give you explanations of the design decisions that we look for in developments. So you can see here, going into the residential scenario, when we're looking at routes for vehicles, you know, it can be problematic if you've got parking at the back of properties where there's no natural or passive surveillance. You know, we look for open and visually direct routes where you have good natural and passive surveillance. And also things as simple as dwelling boundaries, where it gives the occupiers that wee bit of defensible space, and even where they take the ownership to actually look after it. And as you can see on the example here, gates leading to the back of properties, and even the detail of landscaping, where we want to increase natural and passive surveillance, more eyes on the street from the properties, so people can see what's going on, because that's the best form of policing, is that community policing. And it covers things like lighting, and we would always look for even lighting so that if anything does occur, that it can be reported directly to police with good descriptions. And things like secure mail delivery, because we're conscious of identity theft, and especially at the moment with, as you saw the cycle example there, making sure that bikes and the like are secured safely away. And I just thought, you know, now that your mind is thinking like the crime prevention designing out crime officer or a crime prevention officer, you can look at this example, excuse me, this example here of an apartment, and the housing association found it very difficult to actually get any of the tenants to take on this apartment. And the reason it was so problematic was it was down to antisocial behaviour. And you can probably see the cues in the environment here and in the design, where you would have perhaps, you know, shelter from rain. And in the climate that certainly we have here in Northern Ireland, and certainly what I've experienced in Scotland, you know, this just provides an opportunity for perhaps people to gather and to give them the opportunity to commit antisocial behaviour. You know, and that antisocial behaviour really does have an impact on the quality of life of the resident that's residing there. And even other cues from the environment. We certainly saw cases here in Northern Ireland where it's when we're separating waste, for example, whether it is recyclables or cardboards or general waste, and if the actual waste containers, the bins themselves, are not secured, it can be used as a vehicle to set fire, and perhaps even to, you know, put it underneath the shelter there and set fire to it, which is, you know, causes us a great risk to life, which is the last thing we want to happen. But, you know, in the design that we get, or the consultation process that we get involved in with design professionals, you know, things like this that are identified and actually brought to the attention of whether it's the architect or the developer or the planning service. It's just to highlight these problems that we can actually have. And things like when the weather gets perhaps a wee bit better, where you've got people gathering and using sort of informal seating as well. So you can just see by this very simple example, you know, if we take away these measures or put in mitigating features that can actually do away with it, then we actually could be removing all different types of crimes. And that's what we actually do. That's as designing out crime officers, that is our role, is to make places safer. And how we actually give that guidance is through the different use of our design guides, whether it is the Secure by Design homes or commercial premises. We're just about to update the commercial development document, Also licensed premises, healthcare, self-build as well. All of these guides, excuse me, all of these guides are available on the Secure by Design website, as you see there at the bottom of the page. And also, if you just click on guidance when you land on our homepage, you can actually download all of these documents. And the actual process is very simple, and I know that in Stuart's presentation very shortly, he'll be talking about the application process, and it's very straightforward when making the application to your local police. Then we'll review the plans, then you'll be updated. That is, a report is forwarded to the client or the applicant, and then once those measures are put in place, leads to a more secure environment. And there's various regulations as well, whether it's Part Q of building regulations that deals with domestic security in England and Wales. I know that Stuart's going to talk about Section 413 of PAN 27, so I'm just going to kind of skip over this wee bit here. And just to bring things to a close, really, again, following the tragedy of the Grenfell Tower of June 2017, we actually got together with the Door and Hardware Federation and the Fire Industry Association to bring together a quality document that gives recommendation when you're dealing with apartments. Not only do the apartment door sets have to meet the fire regulations, but also the security standards. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that not only in Scotland, but here in Northern Ireland and throughout England as well, there's a lot of Secure by Design member companies now that produce timber door sets that not only meet the fire requirements, but they also meet the security requirements. We would actually classify these doors as being dual certified, so you get the best of both worlds, the fire and security, all in one product. So what I'm going to do now is, thank you very much, I'm going to hand over to Stuart. I'm going to stop the sharing now, and I'm going to hand across to Stuart for his input. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Kenny. My part of the process, well, very firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name's Stuart Ward, and I'm the National Designing Out Crime Manager for Police Scotland. My part of the process is at the front end, at the business end, so to speak. And I'm going to explain the process for obtaining a Secure by Design accreditation. There are obviously a range of Secure by Design accreditations available, but at the moment we're going to concentrate on domestic. So there are obviously a range of accreditation, or parts of the accreditation process, which is fairly straightforward, as Kenny said. The initial contact in Scotland is actually with myself as the National Designing Out Crime Manager. I'm the single point of contact for all the Secure by Design, Designing Out Crime work that's carried out in Scotland. Ideally, contact should be made prior to the planning application. This is important in that should we make recommendations, we don't have to go back to planning if there are changes to the physical environment required. At the initial stages as well, the project is registered as Secure by Design pending, and the application form is then issued to the primary design contact. And once I've had an application, I will allocate that to the appropriate division and appropriate Designing Out Crime officer. So what do I need for an initial application? Required are a location plan and site plan. We need to know where the development is, and at the early stages what the layout is likely to look like. Useful alongside this are elevations of the proposals and perhaps 3D views, landscaping plans or lighting layouts. Useful but not essential at this stage. We can pick these up as the development work progresses. Once I've received the initial contact application, I will provide a unique identification number, which is vital, given that we have quite a few thousand developments on the go at any one time. This identifier stays with the project through its entire life. And whether that's a 1-year development or, as we have some that are just coming up, 9, 10 years for completion. I will then issue that application through to one of the 13 divisions within the Police Scotland area where the development is located. And within that division, the local trained designing out crime officer will be allocated to the project. The designing out crime officers are crime prevention officers who have attended a specialised training event at the Scottish Police College to enable them to assess architects' drawings and proposals, to identify potential crime issues, and they use the CPTED process, or crime prevention through environmental design, to apply measures to each of those developments as they come through. The first task that the DOCO will carry out is the crime profile. They will want to find out, in the vicinity of the development proposed, what are the crime risks. And whether that's housebreaking, theft of vehicles, antisocial behaviour, vandalism, graffiti, any range of the crimes that occur within a radius of that site, they'll find that out from the police analysts who will highlight that risk. That crime profile will be key in going forward through the technical guides and the guidance. It will give an indication of the severity of the risk and what measures are appropriate to be applied. Now, as Kenny mentioned earlier, we have a range of guides. The New Homes 2019, there are schools and commercial developments as well, and they provide the CPTED guidance and the physical security criteria that are required to take forward. We also have the Scottish Technical Handbook for Domestic Dwellings, and section 4.13 within there outlines the Scottish Government's requirements for physical security of all new domestic dwellings in Scotland. This is a building control requirement nowadays. PAN 77 is Designing Safer Communities guidance, and in there are useful information guides to providing safer, secure environmental areas. Designers can utilise the information that's within that PAN to shape the environment around the developments that they are creating. The designing out crime officer will provide a statement of requirements to the initial applicant. These will measure the criteria that must be adhered to and those elements which can be negotiated. Now, a lot of the negotiation can be around the external areas, the CPTED parts, if you will. Some elements, though, are non-negotiable. For example, windows and doors must be past 24 and secured by design accredited. And where appropriate, laminated glass to P1A must be fitted to windows that are adjacent to doors, or panels which are in the doors, or to the escape windows that are easily accessible, such as those that are on upper floors that have no locks. Laminated glass must be fitted to these. In some extreme circumstances where the crime risk is very high, we may ask for P1A laminated glass to be fitted to ground floor windows as well, but that is not a standard. We look throughout the guidance and the statement of requirements that are provided to the designer to ensure that they have all of the relevant information at their fingertips that can guide them towards which level of accreditation, secured by design accreditation, they're going to achieve. Gold accreditation, which is obviously the pinnacle, is where all the measures are met. So that's external areas, the environmental aspect of it, the landscaping, the lighting, the footpaths, the road layouts, coupled with the physical security, windows and doors. As long as those are met, we can award a gold accreditation. Where the external areas can't meet that, or there are aspects of the site that don't enable that, if the windows and doors are fully compliant, past 24 SPD and the P1A fitted, we can award a secured by design silver accreditation. The bronze accreditation applies primarily only to refurbishments. So, for example, a building such as an old hospital or an old office block that's being converted into housing that may not have off-the-shelf apertures for windows and doors, and they have to be bespoke manufactured, we would look to a bronze accreditation for that type of development. Once the DOCO has passed that on to the design team, we hope that the design team will implement any of the recommendations that are there, and through the process of construction, the DOCO will keep in contact with the design team and the construction team. And any alterations or changes to that original design should be notified to the DOCO to assess if there is any impact on the likely risk of crime. At 75% completion, or when the development is wind and watertight, we would like to carry out an intermediate inspection to ensure that the secured by design accreditation is achievable and that we're moving in the right direction for that. If there are any requirements at that stage, we would obviously like that to be implemented prior to completion. At completion, and when the development is ready for handover, we carry out a final inspection. The designing out crime officer has a checklist to ensure that there is compliance with the original recommendations. The secured by design certification can be presented on site following a successful completion. Often, this is sought after for media purposes, and a number of housing associations do like to have the on-site presentation at the official launch to show the residents and occupants that their safety and security has been taken seriously by the developer, by the housing association. And it gives the developer an opportunity, as I said, for some positive media coverage. I'd just like to give a quick bit of a case study. This is Kingdom Housing Association, who primarily have developments throughout Fife. During the years 1997 to 2015, Kingdom Housing Association developed over 150 sites. Of that 150 sites, they were throughout St Andrews, Anstruther, Cooper, Leavenmouth, Glenrothes, Kirkcaldy, Dunfermline and the West Fife villages, and a number of them were selected to take part in our accredited assessment to find out what crimes had occurred on the developments. We picked units or sites that had 10 to 20 units and 20 to 50 units of the secured by design developments. And as a comparator, at the same time, we looked at non-secured by design developments that had not achieved SPD in these same areas throughout St Andrews, Anstruther, Cooper, Leavenmouth, Glenrothes, Kirkcaldy and Dunfermline. Most of these were 20 to 150 units, which were primarily for sale purposes. We did a police postcode analysis of crime types such as housebreaking, attempted housebreaking, antisocial behaviour, theft and vandalism. We compared both the SPD and the non-SPD by postcode using the police system crime file. Each development was measured for the responses and crime types over a 10-year period between 1997 and 2015. Where available, these crime recordings were also assessed for the types of attack that the properties had suffered. The results were startling. The secured by design developments had significantly lower crime rates than the non-secured by design developments. Theft by housebreaking, or as Kenny called it earlier, burglary, on the secured by design developments over that 10-year period, there were 5. On the non-secured by design developments, there were 96. And as you can see, as we go through all of these, attempted theft by housebreaking, 22 on secured by design developments over a 10-year period, 118 on the non-secured by design developments. Sneak-in theft, where someone has left a door unlocked or a window unlocked, 12 on the secured by design developments, 103 in non-secured by design. And OLP is opening of lock-fast places, so that can include outbuildings, garages, sheds, etc. 15 on secured by design developments, 111 on non-secured by design developments. Overall, there were a total of 87% fewer crimes committed against secured by design properties than non-secured by design properties. That gives Kingdom Housing Association and other housing associations significant confidence in using secured by design as a mechanism to ensure the safety and security of their tenants and residents. It also gives Kingdom Housing Association and other housing associations confidence in that their on-costs are significantly reduced through a lack of having to go and repair damage after criminal activity has taken place. The 87% found in Scotland is replicated throughout the UK, and Secured by Design themselves now use those figures to advertise how successful Secured by Design actually is. And as you can see there, over 1 million homes have now been built to police crime prevention standards with reductions in crime of up to 87% every year. That's a significant reduction in criminality. Secured by Design is a long-term influence, but it does work. That's my contact details there. If there are any developers or housing associations, architects, design teams who would like to get in contact with me, please do so. You can call me on the numbers on the screen or by dialing 101 and asking for the Designing Out Crime Manager or asking for the Architectural Liaison Service. So I think what we'll do now is we will see if there are any questions. And we'll just stop screen sharing. Okay. And just asking if there's any questions just now. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. The first one there about fence heights, asking if there's a criteria for fence heights. Fence heights should, on the guidance state that we look for 1.8. However, that's predominantly requires, or we'll look at the crime profile in an area to say whether or not we're going to go full 1.8. If it's a low or a low risk crime area, we may go down to 1.1 or 1 metre to provide a better visibility splay or to make sure that people aren't walking down long passageways that are 1.8 metre high fences either side. So we can have lower fencing. It's not a prescribed criteria, it's one of the ones that we will negotiate.
And also, Stuart, just to add to that as well, if there is a domestic property that's backing on to, say, a canal path or open playing fields, there is a requirement for the fence height to rise up a wee bit to 2 metres. But what residents can also do is you could utilise the 1.8 metre fence with some trellis on top, and even, you know, a bit creative and thinking more about the environment of utilising defensive planting, where if you're planting out perhaps roses with a high thorn content, or pyracantha, or even, you know, to if you've got perhaps brambles or even, you know, even nettles to encourage that growth on the other side of the fencing. All this creates a very good buffer and is just a wee bit more kinder to the environment.
Now, another question there is, does it only apply to housing associations, or can private developers take part in this? This applies to every aspect of the built environment, whether it's residential, commercial, retail, schools, leisure centres, whether it's being done by local authorities or private developers. Secure by Design can be applied across the board of the built environment. So it's not just for housing associations, it's across the board. Any built environment development that's taking place can apply for Secure by Design accreditation.
And just to reinforce the message that, again, you know, the police service provides this service free of charge.
Absolutely. And it's police officers who are trained to deliver the service in Scotland across the board. What's that? Another question there. There is a question about the SBD level 5 accreditation. I think that's more crime prevention initiatives. We won't be carrying out the level 5 for developers in Scotland, but the developers, if they want to get in contact with Secure by Design / Police CPI, I think there are opportunities to have people trained on the Secure by Design level 5 accreditation. I think that's right, Kenny, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you visit the Secure by Design website, as we said previously, www.securebydesign.com, if you look under group initiatives, you will see there that the Police Crime Prevention Academy is listed, and all the contact details are on there, plus our online courses also. And obviously under the current situation that we find ourselves in and utilising this type of technology, it's certainly something that we're moving more towards, is the digital platforms for the delivery of crime prevention and designing out crime training and other training as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your attention. As I said, we're easily contactable through the channels that are available there from the Police Scotland website or the Secure by Design website. If you have any queries at all with regards designing out crime within the built environment or the Secure by Design accreditation, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. All the best.